About 2,500 years ago, in the Himalayan foothills of present-day Nepal, a king resided in a grand palace. He was expecting a son, and for this child, the king had a particularly extraordinary plan. He would ensure that the child's life was perfect, allowing him to never experience a moment of suffering. Every need and desire would be met at all times. The king constructed towering walls around the palace that kept the prince from knowing the outside world. He spoiled the child, lavishing him with food and gifts while surrounding him with servants who created his every whim. As planned, the child grew up oblivious to the routine cruelties of human existence. All of the prince's childhood unfolded in this manner. But despite the constant luxury and opulence, he became a frustrated young man. Soon, every experience felt empty and meaningless. The issue was that no matter what his father provided, it never seemed sufficient or held any significance. Late one night, the prince sneaked out of the palace to explore what lay beyond its walls. He had a servant drive him through the local village, and what he saw horrified him. For the first time in his life, the prince witnessed human suffering. He encountered sick individuals, the homeless, those in pain, and even people who were dying. The prince returned to the palace and found himself in an existence of crisis. Not knowing how to process what he had witnessed, he became quite emotional about everything and complained frequently. As is typical of young men, the prince ended up blaming his father for the very things his father had tried to protect him from. It was the riches, the prince thought, that had made him so miserable and rendered life so seemingly meaningless that he decided to run away. But the prince was more like his father, and he knew he had grand ideas as well. He wouldn't just run away, he would give up his royal status, family and possessions to live on the streets, sleeping in dirt like an animal. There he would starve, torment himself, and beg for scraps of food from strangers for the rest of his life. Then, next, the prince snuck out of the palace again. This time, never to return. For years, he lived as a bum, a discarded and forgotten remnant of society, descending to the bottom of the social totem pile. As planned, the prince suffered greatly. He endured disease, hunger, pain, loneliness, and decay. He confronted the brink of death itself, often limiting to eating a single nut each day. A few years passed, then a few more, and then nothing happened. The prince began to realize that this life of suffering wasn't all that it was cracked up to be. It wasn't providing the insight that he sought. It wasn't revealing any deeper mysteries of the world or its ultimate purpose. The prince came to understand what the rest of us have always known, that suffering totally sucks. And it's not necessarily that meaningful either. Just like being rich, there is no value in suffering when it's done without purpose. Soon, the prince concluded that his grand idea, like his father's, was a terrible idea, and he should probably do something else instead. Confused, the prince tidied himself up and found a large tree near a river. He decided to sit under the tree and stay there until he came up with another grand idea. As the legend goes, the confused prince sat under the tree for 49 days. Now, let's not delve into the biological feasibility of sitting in the same spot for 49 days. But let's just say that during that time, the prince he reached several profound realizations. One of those realizations was that life itself is a form of suffering. The rich suffer because of their wealth. The poor suffer due to their poverty. Those without a family suffer from the lack of family. Those with a family suffer because of their family. Individuals who pursue worldly pleasures, they suffer from those pleasures. And those who resist worldly pleasures, I'll get that out in a minute, suffer because of their resistance. This isn't to say that all suffering is equal. Some suffering is more painful than others, but we must all suffer less. Now, years later, the prince developed his own philosophy and shared it with the world. Its first and central tenet was that pain and loss are inevitable and we should stop resisting them. The prince became known as the Buddha, and I guess in case you haven't heard of him, it's kind of a big deal. Premise underlies many of our assumptions and beliefs. This premise is that happiness is algorithmic. It can be worked for, earned, and achieved, as if it was an acceptance to law school or a construction of complicated Lego set. If I achieve X, then I can be happy. If I examine Y, then I can be happy. If I can be with a person like Z, then I can be happy. This premise, however, is problematic. Happiness is not a solvable equation. Dissatisfaction and unease are inherent parts of human nature, necessary components for fostering consistent happiness. If you wish to learn more about accepting what is, then take a look at some of my other Black Belt Mindset videos. And like always, hopefully I'll see you in the dojo real soon.